So we're gonna have a part two here. This is the primary order of the participation in the conception of the expanding state of the universe. The cosmological principle of the expanding state of the universe. What does this mean specifically for the human being? The human being at this point has and always will be pre-primordial creation. Right, we're talking here about the divine spark itself, the essence of God, right, in the same way that Christ is the Son of God, or the, not even the representation, but the emanating embodiment of the God principle. And the God principle is the creative principle in action, or the creative principle in space and time, and this is the nexus and cross of matter, the cross of spirit and time, or spirit and matter. What this means specifically for the human being is the utter, and yeah, sure, this sounds terrifying and difficult, right? The utmost, and total refusal, death of, right? Again, this is kind of going, funnily enough, right? This is the anti-Nietzschean principle, going against the whole death of God thing into the whole death of everything that is not God thing, which is the death of culture, the death of ideology, the death of reason. I mean, the death of anything that is not ultimately coming from this ultimate creative principle, which is the divine artist or the divine child. And I mean, obviously we have these things, right, where you're walking around in space and there's cars and there's trees and there's rivers, and you need to engage in a certain level of just kind of base material consciousness to do certain things, like cook a meal, take a shower, walk around in space, right? But what needs to happen is there's this sort of sage presence from this, maybe I'll describe it as the theta and gamma states of consciousness, where it's this on the threshold between the waking, the conscious, and the unconscious, where the artistic and creative principle comes through, because you're running between these two rivers that exist on sort of the underside and overside of reality, the reality and the surreality. I mean, obviously the surrealism as a artistic movement existing and coexisting with the kind of onslaught of World War II into the 40s, 50s. This movement can't be separated from World War II from a consciousness perspective, because what it symbolizes, again, this also is in reference to the existentialists and Camus, there's this sudden clashing of a global reality where, I mean, really for the first time we're engaging in these global wars and global conflicts, and the world has become globalized. You could say first by war and war technologies, and then second by the internet, for instance, or supply chains. And this globalization of the world is the death of God in the Nietzschean sense, that God is dead in a religious sense, but there needs to be this spirit revival, the concept of the spirit of God being God, this metaphysical conception of the spirit in nature, and the spirit as nature, and the spirit as that which has, to say it in sort of Gnostic terms, 1,000 eyes, or is all of the eyes, and through the eyes see the reality, and through the eyes pierce the veil of nature into the kingdom of God, right, or the kingdom of the divine circulation and movement of the life's blood, or the life force energy. That the human being as agent is creator and is artist, and this is the emanation, the plurimatic emanation of God and God consciousness, seeded into the divine spark of the human being with legs and arms, right? This is a you could say Darwinian evolution or whatever, but this is an evolution of consciousness through space and through time, right? Where the fish walks out onto the land, or the ape or the monkey. You could debate how it happens. I'm going to say the ape or the monkey is interfacing with nature and has a series of kind of psychedelic or apocalyptic revelations about the nature of the mind, much in the way of Adam and Eve eating the apple, as told by the snake, right? There is this evolutionary, if you go back to the Adam and Eve story, this evolutionary call of consciousness toward itself to evolve and to move into further states of self-realization. And this self-realization is really the opening up of the doors and the gates of the universe. that the William Blake quote, if the doors of perception were cleansed, man would perceive everything as it is, infinite, instead of staring through the narrow chinks in his cavern. And this is an obvious reference to Plato and the allegory of the cave, where man is sitting and staring at the shadows of the fires on the wall that are acting out this sort of play, and is immersed and entranced, much as you might say he's immersed and entranced by technology and video games and this kind of virtual reality production that is the production of culture. But man is being called out by his own consciousness to emerge into the sun and into the sunlight, into the true revelation and direct interfacing with the God consciousness itself. And in doing so, right, this is the interfacing with the divine spark, which is the stone of the soul, the philosopher's stone, the deepest and the darkest, through channeling down through the annals of history back into this sort of abyss of silence, the meditative state, right? This is something that can be accessed within, but also can be accessed without in terms of the empirical revelations of something like quantum physics or quantum mechanics, right? And both of these things are angling towards the same thing. You're going up into the space-time of spirit, or you're going down into the space-time of the soul, going up into heaven, going down into hell, so on and so forth, going up into space, going down into the soul, going down into the earth, the chambers of the earth. And these are ways of sort of outward exploration that have been occurring throughout human history, but what I'm suggesting here is there's this inner exploration, which is the exploration of the inspirited or the ensouled artist, which is making contact with the spirit and the soul by way of interfacing with the technology of the human body, which is the vessel for, contains the divine spark. And this is the technology through which we come to know ourselves, right? I'm not suggesting here that we are simply the body, but that the body is actually a way, if not the way, of which we come to know ourselves in the light of God, right? We're not watching, sure, watching a television show is a great example, or going out into nature is a great example. You're using these senses and these sense mechanisms which perceive an object or perceive something in space and in time through a medium. Filtered through the medium interfaces with the consciousness mechanism of the organism. And the organism has to decide, like much like a cat or a monkey or whatever, is this a threat? Is this something that's a good thing for me? Is this something that I should eat? Is this dangerous? Is this part of my reality? What is the meaning of this? These are the ways, of course, right? We're using the body as a medium through which the spirit can be known, right? The spirit of things and the spirit of ourselves. And what this means for artistry is ultimately a sort of inner seeing or insight, inner vision. And this is an extrasensory realm of perception here. We're not talking about merely the eyes in the sense of seeing outwardly, or merely the taste, or merely the sound, or merely the smell, but this way of which we're accessing the inner state of reality by way of channeling what is within. And what is within, this is the difficulty of true novelty, right? What is truly novel does not have language. And for that thing that is truly novel to come into language, it has to be translated through the sort of cultural vessel of whatever exists, whatever sort of medium exists that can be linguistically expressed, which in one way or another is an abasement or debasement of the thing itself, much in the way of the painting that attempts to express the inner reality, or the poem or the speech that attempts to express the inner reality has to use this sort of lexicon of bandied about and splashed together kind of collage of cultural images and gestures and existing colors, whatever it's markers, paints, materials, symbols that are going to communicate this essence of this thing, which is the ineffable, into the world, out into the world. But what I'm going to argue here in terms of the spiritual artistry is that there is this creation of novel symbologies or novel archetypes or novel meanings which are somehow emerging primarily, but through language to be communicated in new syntaxes. So obviously this can go back to the Platonic solids, this conception of the divine geometry and the workings of the physical world is that certain things have to come into shape and size to be functional or to even exist on this material plane, right? There has to be a certain resonance to a guitar in order for it to sound, the strings and the inner resonance of the hollow body, or even the electrical inner workings of an electric guitar, or right, the chair has to be able to support a certain amount of weight, which means it has to be made with certain materials. There is a physical weightiness or a physical density to this material world through which the spirit or the soul has to pass through the veil in order to become grounded or even make an apparition or exist, right? So this is also the idea there that the divine spark is seated within these material grounds which appear to have an opaque density by the very nature that they have to be this way. Like if you were going to exist and interface with the gravity on Pluto, you would have to be much heavier, much denser to exist on that plane. There is a certain body of the possibility which are the structures of the physical reality, and the density of them and the character of their density is what holds the body of light. And through that vessel, the body of light is that which communicates and is communicating. And this is a highly sophisticated human technology. And I would be the first to say we don't understand. I'm not going to say we can't understand, but I think our responsibility is to learn how to interface with it as a proprietary, sovereign consciousness. And what this means is without culture, without definition, without meaning, without reason, we interface directly with our humanity, directly with our existence, directly with our bodies. And what this requires is an unlearning at a previously, I think, uncognized level, that the unlearning is the stripping away of everything that we believe to be true about our humanity, and instead interface directly with our humanity as this source of boundless potential creative energy, the life force energy itself. This is interacting with our humanity directly in the way of a sort of, I'm not going to say like alien spacecraft maybe, but as a sort of technology of the very universe or the cosmic creation or God itself, the cosmic Christ itself, the divine child itself. And doing this requires a psychological unlearning at the level and scale of the journey of Dante, down into hell and up into heaven, down into the soul and up into the spirit, where the journey down and in first is a journey of the unlearning of the entirety of the substratum and the sediment of the unconscious, subliminal humanity. There's a quote by Jung where he says the unconscious is a witchcraft in the sense that it perpetuates unconsciousness by way of unconsciousness, not only within oneself but in a collective or group or social environment. And what we're dealing with, and I think what is important to be acknowledged here, is that we've been dealing with for millennia now a state of humanity which is at mass and en masse unconscious, with the rare exception of sort of initiates of the mystery schools which come into direct contact with the pleroma and become in this way, if not enlightened, then at least aware in some sense or sort of the cosmic reality, and then are tasked with the process of integrating this knowledge and becoming embodiments of this divinity, this eternity, in an ephemeral and changing and transmutative and transubstantiated body. The sacraments of this world have continually been misinterpreted as wars and separations, and this sort of fury of the projection outward of the inwardly psychologically immature and warring state of consciousness, which is the sort of slow psychological development of humanity, which even now is occurring at these rates, which are almost regressive, even in the light of the technologies that have sprung up over the past 50 years of human civilization. Talking in the year 2023, I guess AD is what they're calling it. is that there have been these substantial technological developments, and yet what lags is the true technology, which is the technology of mankind and humanity. This definition of the human being and what it means to be human is a definition that has been not only historically limiting, but historically almost denying of the true creative power and potential of being human, as being the seed of the divine spark of the self and the soul, inhabiting a form which allows for the creation of truly novel and creative things, right? And what we're talking about here is not building empires. I mean, maybe you could say like some of the architecture of humanity is novel creation, but what we're talking about is what's necessary is the direct interfacing of consciousness with the inner spirit or the divine spark of the individual, which is something at once unique as it is eternal and whole and one. In the same way that we talk about the nexus of this moment, this ephemerality of the now, but also the eternal presentness of the now. Interfacing with this is the art of creation.